Took you long enough, didn't it? Look who finally got it. Look who stopped defending, stopped explaining, stopped begging them to see you differently. You beautiful, terrifying genius. You know what you just did? You took their favorite weapon and made it your crown. They called you a monster, didn't they? Expected you to crumble, to cry, to scramble for redemption. But instead you smiled. You looked them dead in the eye and said, yes. Yes, I am. Thank you for finally seeing me clearly. And that's when their whole world tilted. You see, they've been calling you names for years. Too intense, too much, too aggressive, too cold, too calculating. They had their little labels all lined up like ammunition, but they never expected you to catch the bullets with your teeth and spit them back as poetry. The moment you agreed with their insult, something fundamental shifted in the universe. The power dynamic flipped so hard they got whiplash. Because when you own what they throw at you, when you wear their hatred like designer clothes, what the hell are they supposed to do next? Let me tell you what really happened in that moment. When you said, yes, I'm a monster, you didn't just accept their label. You transcended the entire game. You see, insults only work when the target believes they're supposed to be something else. They wanted you to defend your humanity, to prove you're not what they said. That's the trap. That's always been the trap. As long as you're defending, you're losing. As long as you're explaining, you're beneath them. But the second you embrace it, the second you thank them for the recognition, you become untouchable. Because now they're not insulting you. They're simply describing you accurately. And accuracy isn't an attack, it's just observation. The sky is blue, water is wet, I am a monster, just facts, no emotion, no weakness, just truth. Think about it. Every great force in history was called monstrous by those who couldn't comprehend it. The storm doesn't apologize for being destructive. The ocean doesn't explain why it drowns things. And you don't need to justify your nature to insects. But here's what they didn't realize when they labeled you. A monster is just someone who's transcended human limitations. Someone who's stopped playing by rules designed to keep people small. Someone who's too powerful for their comfort zone. So when you said, yes, I'm a monster, what you really said was, yes, I've evolved past your comprehension. Yes, I've outgrown your cage. Yes, I operate on frequencies you can't access. Thank you for noticing. It's about damn time. You know what's funny? They spent years trying to shame you into shrinking, trying to make you feel bad for being too much. But monsters don't shrink. Monsters expand. Monsters take up space. Monsters make the room adjust to their presence, not the other way around. And now look at them. Confused, speechless. They don't know what to do with someone who won't play victim. Someone who takes their worst accusation and wears it like a medal. Someone who transforms their poison into power. You want to know why this move destroyed them? Because shame is their only currency, and you just declared bankruptcy. When you refuse to be ashamed of what you are, when you celebrate what they fear, you become their walking nightmare. They called you heartless. Thank you for recognizing my emotional efficiency. They called you manipulative. I prefer strategically brilliant. They called you dangerous. Only to those who deserve it. Every insult becomes a compliment when you own it with a smile. This isn't about being defensive or sarcastic. This is about genuine ownership. When you truly embrace what they call you, when you genuinely thank them for seeing a truth you've already accepted, you short-circuit their entire operating system. Because here's what they never understood. You can't hurt someone with the truth they've already embraced. You can't wound someone with a reality they've already weaponized. You can't break someone who's already been shattered and rebuilt themselves with the pieces. The moment you agreed with their insult, you became the narrator of your own story. Before, they were trying to write your character. Look at this monster, they said, thinking they were the authors. But when you said yes and, you snatched the pen right out of their hands. Now, you're not the villain in their story. You're the protagonist in your own epic. A monster, but a magnificent one. A necessary one, the kind that makes the world more interesting just by existing. Watch their faces when you thank them for their observations. Watch the confusion, the fear, the begrudging respect. They wanted to hurt you, but instead they crowned you. They wanted to diminish you, but instead they defined you. And definitions are just boundaries, and you were born to break those. You see, when you agree with their worst assessment, you force them to confront an uncomfortable truth. Maybe they were right. Maybe you are exactly what they said. And if that's true, what does it say about their inability to handle you? Let's get philosophical for a moment. What is a monster, really? It's something that doesn't fit the normal categories. Something that breaks the rules of what's supposed to exist. Something that makes people question their reality just by being present. Congratulations. That's you now. You're the glitch in their matrix. The error message in their perfect little program. The thing that goes bump in their daylight because you don't even wait for night to be terrifying. But here's the beautiful part. Being a monster doesn't mean being evil. It means being beyond good and evil. It means operating from a place where their moral judgments are irrelevant, where their opinions are just noise, where their fear is just confirmation that you're doing something right. You know what monsters do? They change the ecosystem just by existing. They force evolution in everything around them. People either level up to handle your presence or they flee. Either way, you've improved the quality of your environment. You've turned your entire existence into a social experiment. Every interaction is now a test. Can they handle the real you? Can they stand in the presence of someone who won't apologize for their power? Can they respect someone who refuses to beg for acceptance? Most will fail this test. They'll run, they'll gossip, they'll try to drag you back down to their level. But watch what happens when you keep agreeing with their assessments. Yes, I'm too intense. It's one of my best features. Yes, I'm ruthless. Efficiency usually is. Not being arrogant, you're being accurate. There's a difference between defending yourself and defining yourself. When you defend, you give them power. When you define, you take it all back. And the beautiful irony, the more you embrace their labels, the less accurate those labels become. Because a monster that owns its monstrosity transcends it. A villain who acknowledges their villainy becomes something else entirely. Something they don't have a word for yet. Here's what happens next. Now that you've claimed your monster status, now that you've thanked them for the recognition, you get to decide what kind of monster you are. Not them. Never them. Only you. Are you the kind that protects what matters with terrifying efficiency? The kind that builds empires from the bones of what tried to break you? The kind that loves so fiercely it looks like destruction to those who've only known lukewarm affection? You get to write your own mythology now. Every action becomes part of your legend. Every word becomes scripture for those brave enough to follow your example. Every silence becomes more powerful than their screaming. Because when you stop asking for permission to exist, when you stop apologizing for taking up space, when you stop explaining your nature to those who could never understand it anyway, you become what they always accused you of being: unstoppable. Think about the strategic advantage you now hold. They've shown you their worst weapon, their words, their judgments, their attempts to shame you, and you've shown them it doesn't work. You've disarmed them completely. What are they going to do now? Call you more names? You'll thank them for the additional titles. Try to exclude you? You'll build your own kingdom. Attempt to make you feel bad? You'll turn their poison into fuel. You've become psychologically bulletproof, not because you don't feel, but because you've learned to digest their hatred like a delicacy. You've developed an immune system that turns toxins into strength. And here's the kicker: they know it. They see it in your eyes when you smile at their insults. They feel it in the air when you walk in unashamed. They taste it in the silence after you agree with their worst opinions of you. But this isn't just about you anymore. When you agreed with their insult, when you thanked them for calling you a monster, you didn't just free yourself. You lit a signal fire for every other person they've tried to shame into submission. Others are watching. Others who've been called too much, too intense, too different. They're seeing what happens when someone stops defending and starts owning. When someone stops shrinking and starts expanding. When someone stops apologizing and starts appreciating. You've become permission incarnate. Permission to be unapologetic. Permission to be powerful. Permission to be exactly what they're afraid of and love it. Your existence is now a rebellion against every social contract designed to keep people small. And the most terrifying part for them, it's contagious. Your acceptance of their labels, your gratitude for their recognition, it's spreading. Others are starting to smile when insulted. Others are starting to say yes and. Others are starting to realize that their approval was never the prize. So here are your new rules of engagement. When they call you cold, thank them for noticing your emotional discipline. When they call you calculating, appreciate their recognition of your strategic mind. When they call you a monster, smile like they just handed you a crown. Because they did, they just don't know it yet. Every insult is an acknowledgement of your power. Every attempt to shame you is admission that you affect them. Every label they throw is evidence that you're living in their heads rent-free. You don't argue with their assessments anymore. You amplify them. You don't defend against their attacks. You absorb them and grow stronger. You don't explain your nature. You demonstrate it with every breath. The game has changed because you changed the rules. You're not playing defense anymore. You're not even playing offense. You've transcended the game entirely. You're the monster under their bed, and you're thanking them for providing such comfortable accommodations. Let's talk about why they're really afraid. It's not because you're a monster, it's because you're a mirror. When you embrace what they call you, you force them to see themselves clearly, and what they see terrifies them. They see their own cowardice in trying to shame you. They see their own weakness in needing you to be smaller. They see their own limitations in failing to comprehend your evolution. You're not just a monster, you're their monster, created by their inability to handle authentic power. And now that you've thanked them for the recognition, they have to live with what they've created. They have to face the fact that their worst insult is your best compliment, that their greatest fear is your greatest strength, that their rejection was your liberation. You know what's really monstrous? The clarity with which you now see through their games, the ease with which you navigate their traps, the joy with which you embrace what they meant as punishment. But here's the thing about being a monster. It's not a destination, it's a journey. Every day you get to evolve further beyond their comprehension. Every day you get to explore new depths of your power. Every day you get to discover what else they were right about without knowing it. Maybe you are heartless in the sense that you no longer let emotions cloud your judgment. Maybe you are ruthless in the sense that you no longer accept less than you deserve. Maybe you are dangerous in the sense that you can no longer be controlled. These aren't flaws to be fixed. They're features to be maximized. Every trait they tried to shame you for is actually a superpower they're too afraid to develop in themselves. You're not broken, you're breakthrough. You're not wrong, you're evolved. And the best part? This is just the beginning. Now that you've accepted their labels, you get to exceed them. Now that you've embraced being a monster, you get to define what that means. Now that you've thanked them for seeing you, you get to become something they can't even imagine yet. So here's your manifesto, fellow monster. Here's your declaration of independence from their opinions, their shame, their small-minded attempts to contain you. You ready? Here it is. I am what you called me and more. I am the monster you warned each other about, and I wear that title with pride. I am too much, too intense, too powerful for your comfort, and I thank you for noticing. I will not shrink. I will not apologize. I will not pretend to be less than I am. Your insults are my inventory. Your fears are my fuel. Your inability to handle me is not my problem to solve. I am the monster in your story, but I'm the hero in mine, and my story is the only one that matters. I don't need your understanding. I don't need your approval. I don't need your permission to exist at full volume. I am the consequence of every time you tried to make someone small. I am the result of every person who chose power over pleasing you. Call me what you want. I'll thank you for the recognition and keep becoming more of what terrifies you, because your fear tells me I'm on the right path. Your discomfort confirms my growth. Your labels are just mile markers on my evolution. Now let's get practical. How do you apply this in real life? Simple. Next time someone tries to insult you, pause, smile, consider their word, then thank them, mean it. Find the kernel of truth in their attack and water it until it grows into your strength. You're so selfish. Thank you for noticing I've finally learned to prioritize myself. You're impossible to deal with. I appreciate you recognizing my high standards. You've changed. Thank you for acknowledging my growth. But here's the key. You have to mean it. This isn't sarcasm. This isn't deflection. This is genuine gratitude for their observation. Because whether they meant to or not, they've given you valuable information about how you're perceived, and perception is just another tool in your arsenal. When you genuinely thank them, When you truly embrace their label, you create a paradox they can't solve. How do you hurt someone who appreciates your attempts to hurt them? How do you shame someone who's grateful for your observations? How do you break someone who uses your hammer to forge themselves stronger? Feel the energy shift when you do this. Feel how the power dynamic completely reverses. They came to drain you, but instead they fed you. They came to diminish you, but instead they defined you. They came to hurt you, but instead they helped you. This is energetic alchemy at its finest. You're literally turning lead into gold, taking their base metals, their insults, their projections, their fears, and transmuting them into pure power. You're not just surviving their attacks, you're thriving on them, and they feel it. Oh, they feel it. They feel the moment their weapon becomes your strength. They feel the instant their poison becomes your medicine. They feel the shift when their attempt to make you smaller only makes you larger. That's why they'll stop. Not out of respect, though that might come later, but out of self-preservation. Because every time they attack you now, they only make you stronger. Every insult is an investment in your power. Every attempt to hurt you is a donation to your evolution. But this isn't just about individual interactions. This is about the long game. When you consistently thank people for their insults, when you genuinely embrace what they call you, you create a reputation that precedes you. Word spreads. Don't bother trying to insult them, they'll just thank you. Don't try to shame them, they've already embraced it. Don't attempt to make them feel bad, they'll turn it into fuel. You become psychologically untouchable. Not because you're defended, but because you're undefined by their definitions. You exist in a space beyond their ability to categorize or control. You're the monster that can't be slain because you're already dead to their opinions. And in that death is your resurrection. In that ending is your beginning. In that acceptance is your ascension. You're not just surviving anymore. You're thriving in the very conditions that were meant to destroy you. Here's what being a monster has taught you. Their opinions were never about you, they were always about them. Their fear of your intensity was about their own dimness. Their hatred of your power was about their own weakness. Their need to label you was about their inability to understand you. So when you thank them for calling you a monster, you're really thanking them for revealing themselves, for showing you clearly who can handle your evolution and who can't, for sorting themselves into categories, those who rise to meet you and those who try to drag you down. The monster sees clearly in the dark. The monster navigates by different stars. The monster knows that what others call destruction is sometimes just rapid transformation. What others call heartless is sometimes just boundaried. What others call dangerous is sometimes just powerful. You've graduated from their school of shame. You've earned your degree in self-ownership. You've mastered the art of turning their weapons into your tools. And now you get to teach others how to do the same. Welcome back, you silent assassins. You walking withdrawals. You beautiful ghosts who stopped haunting and started living. They finally figured it out, didn't they? The worst part isn't that you stopped caring, it's that you stopped pretending you ever did. Let me tell you what's keeping them up. At 3 a.m., scrolling through old conversations, analyzing timestamps, studying the exact moment you went cold. It's not anger they're searching for. Anger they could handle. Anger means there's still fire, still feeling, still a chance. What they found instead was something infinitely worse. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just empty space where their name used to echo. You see, there's a specific kind of terror that comes with being genuinely forgotten. Not blocked, not cursed, not even hated. Just erased from the registry of things that matter. They keep texting, don't they? Those little breadcrumb messages disguised as casual check-ins, hoping to trigger some reaction, some proof that you're still thinking about them. But you're not angry, you're not bitter, you're not planning revenge, you're not even indifferent in the dramatic way. You simply moved on like they were a chapter in a book. You returned to the library 3 years ago, and that's what's eating them alive right now. Let's talk about what really happened here. Because they're spinning this narrative, trying to convince themselves and everyone else that you're playing games. They're telling people you're being petty, you're trying to hurt them, you're doing this for attention. But deep down in the parts of themselves they won't admit exist, they know the truth. You're not performing coldness. You're genuinely living a life where they don't exist. You're not checking if they viewed your story. You're not posting things hoping they'll see. You're not carefully crafting your happiness to make them jealous. You're just happy, and they're not part of the equation anymore, not even as a variable. Here's what they didn't understand when they took you for granted. There's a difference between someone who's mad at you and someone who's done with you. Mad people still engage. They argue, they react, they give you the satisfaction of knowing you still matter. But done people, they don't give you anything, not even the energy of hate. You became a stranger to them, not through effort, but through genuine emotional evolution. And that's the part that's destroying them, because it means they can't undo it, can't win you back, can't manipulate their way into relevance. The door isn't locked. It simply doesn't exist anymore. They're experiencing something truly poetic right now. The realization that indifference is the only thing worse than hate. Hatred means you still occupy space in someone's world, even if it's negative space. It's still real estate. But indifference means you've been evicted, deleted, removed from the property entirely. They're standing outside a building that was demolished months ago, still knocking on air, still shouting at foundations that were poured over. And every time they reach out, every time they try to reopen communication, they're confronted with the same reality. You're polite, you're civil, you're kind, even, but you're unavailable, emotionally, energetically, spiritually unavailable. Do you know what's happening in their group chats right now? They're analyzing your every move, trying to decode your social media posts, searching for hidden messages directed at them. Did you see what they posted? Is that about me? Why are they so happy? Who's making them laugh like that? They're running forensic analysis on your life, trying to find evidence of their impact, and coming up empty. Because you're not posting for them, you're not living for them, you're not even living in spite of them. You're just living, and they're realizing they're not even part of the story anymore. Not the villain, not the lesson, not even a footnote, just absent. Let me tell you what's really twisting the knife for them, though. It's not that you found someone better. It's that you found yourself better. You evolved. You healed. You became a version of yourself that doesn't need what they were offering. They're watching you thrive, not out of revenge, but out of genuine growth. And it's forcing them to confront something absolutely devastating. Maybe you didn't need them. Maybe you were always capable of this happiness, this peace, this power. Maybe they weren't the blessing they convinced themselves they were. Maybe they were just a delay, a detour, a lesson in what not to accept. And that realization, it's shattering their entire self-perception. Here's the psychology they're dealing with right now, and it's brutal. When someone hates you, it validates your importance in their life. It confirms you mattered enough to hurt them. But when someone is genuinely over you, it invalidates your entire narrative. Suddenly, all those times you thought you had power, all those moments you believed they couldn't live without you, all that confident swagger about being irreplaceable, it all crumbles. Because here they are very much living without you, thriving even, and you're forced to face the possibility that maybe you weren't as special as you thought. Maybe your absence was easier to fill than your presence was to tolerate. They're going through the stages right now: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, but they're stuck. They can't reach acceptance. Because acceptance would mean admitting you're actually gone, that the version of you who cared, who fought, who tried, who gave chances, that person died and isn't coming back. They keep looking for resurrection signs, hoping your coldness is just a phase, a test, a game. But every interaction, every polite but distant response, every time you treat them like an acquaintance, it reinforces the same crushing truth. You're not coming back because there's nothing to come back to. You didn't leave a relationship, you graduated from one. Let's go deeper into what they're feeling, because this is where it gets truly delicious. They're experiencing a unique type of grief. The grief of losing someone who's still alive and functioning perfectly fine without them. It's like watching your funeral from a distance, realizing nobody's crying the way you thought they would. They're seeing you at parties laughing, hearing about your success, your new connections, your growth, and none of it includes them, not even as a memory you mention, not even as a story you tell. You've effectively written them out of your narrative, and they're experiencing the existential dread of being a deleted character. Remember when they had access to you, when they could text at 2 a.m. and you'd respond, when they could show up unannounced and you'd make time, when they could hurt you and you'd forgive. They're mourning that version of you, the one who was available, accessible, emotionally invested. But here's what's destroying them. That version didn't die because of something they did one time. It died because of everything they didn't do repeatedly. You didn't wake up one day and decide to stop caring. It was a slow erosion, a gradual realization, a quiet death of investment. And now they're facing the consequences not through your anger, but through your absence. They're trying to provoke you right now, aren't they? Posting things they know you'll see, saying things through mutual friends, dating people who look like you, trying desperately to get any reaction. Because any reaction would mean you still care, would mean they still have power, would mean this indifference is performative. But you're not reacting. You're not even pretending not to see. You genuinely don't care what they do, who they're with, what they say. And that's the final nail. They can't manipulate someone who's genuinely detached. They can't hurt someone who's genuinely healed. Can't control someone who's genuinely free. Here's what they're understanding now. Probably for the first time in their life, actions have permanent consequences. They thought they could treat you however they wanted, and you'd always be there. Thought your love, your patience, your forgiveness was infinite. They tested boundaries, pushed limits, took advantage, and you let them for a while. Because you're not cruel, you give chances, you believe in growth. But there was a final straw. They didn't see coming, didn't recognize, didn't think existed. And when you reached it, you didn't explode, you didn't rage, you didn't give them the dramatic exit. They could paint themselves as victims of you, just quietly, internally, completely checked out. Now they're dealing with something called emotional object permanence, or rather the lack of it. When you're gone, you're actually gone. You're not sitting around thinking about them, processing them, healing from them. You processed, you healed, you moved on, and now, when they're not in front of you, they literally don't exist in your consciousness. It's like they were a song you used to know all the words to, but now when it plays, you can't even remember why you liked it. This isn't closure. This is something more final than closure. This is complete emotional neutrality, the kind that can't be reversed because it's not based on hurt. It's based on evolution. They're probably telling people you're cold now, heartless, different, not the person they knew. And you know what? They're right. You're not that person anymore. Because that person was exhausted from caring about people who didn't care back. That person was depleted from giving to people who only took. That person was broken from loving people who only knew how to damage. But this version of you, this one learned the most powerful lesson in human psychology. You can't lose what you're not attached to. Can't be hurt by what doesn't matter. Can't be controlled by what you don't need. You became untouchable. Not through walls, but through genuine indifference. Let me tell you what's happening in their mind right now, because this is psychological warfare they didn't know existed. Every time they see you unbothered, it chips away at their self-image. Every time they hear you're doing well without them, it challenges their narrative. Every time they realize you're not even thinking about them, it creates cognitive dissonance they can't resolve. Because they need to believe they mattered. They need to believe their presence was significant, their absence impactful. But you're living proof that neither was true, that they were replaceable, forgettable, survivable. And that's an identity crisis they're not equipped to handle. They're experiencing what psychologists call the devaluation reversal. When they had you, they devalued you, took you for granted, treated your presence like a given. Now that you're gone, they're overvaluing what they lost, romanticizing what you had, rewriting history to paint themselves as victims of your coldness. But here's the thing, you're not rewriting anything. You remember exactly what happened, exactly how you were treated, exactly why you left. You're just not angry about it anymore. Anger requires caring, and you don't. You've reached a place of pure objective truth. They weren't good for you. You're better without them. Case closed. This is where it gets really interesting, because they're starting to notice patterns. Every person who genuinely leaves them does the same thing. Eventually stops responding, stops caring, stops being affected, and they're beginning to suspect. Maybe the problem isn't that everyone else is cold. Maybe the problem is they don't know how to value people until they're gone. But that level of self-reflection requires humility. They don't possess accountability. They refuse to accept. So instead, they'll keep blaming you, keep painting you as the villain, keep telling themselves you changed, when the truth is, you just stopped tolerating who they were. And that distinction, it's everything. You know what's beautiful about where you are right now? You're not trying to prove anything. You're not posting cryptic quotes, hoping they'll see. You're not making your happiness loud, hoping they'll hear. You're just genuinely living a life that doesn't include them. Not as an enemy, not as a memory, not even as a lesson learned and moved past. They're completely irrelevant. And irrelevance is the most powerful form of revenge that doesn't require any effort. You're not doing this to them, you're doing this for you. And the fact that it destroys them, that's just a side effect of your growth. They're starting to panic now because the window is closing. There was a time when they could have apologized, explained, changed, and maybe, just maybe, you would have given another chance. But that time has passed, not because you're bitter, but because you're different. You want different things, value different qualities, require different energy. The version of you they knew, the one who accepted breadcrumbs, who overlooked red flags, who believed potential over proof, that version graduated, evolved, transcended. And this new version doesn't have space for people who need 100 chances to do what should have been done naturally, being decent. Here's what they'll never understand about indifference. It's not the opposite of love. Hate is. Indifference is the absence of love, the void that remains when caring dies. Hate still requires emotional investment, still needs energy, still proves you matter. But indifference proves you don't. Not anymore. Not ever again. They're experiencing the difference between being left and being outgrown, being blocked and being forgotten, being hated and being nothing, and nothing. That's what's breaking them, slowly, quietly, completely. Because how do you fight nothing? How do you win back someone who isn't fighting you? They're just not including you. They're probably cycling through old messages right now, reading conversations, trying to pinpoint where it went wrong. Was it that argument, that broken promise, the time they chose someone else over you? But here's what they're missing. It wasn't one thing. It was everything, accumulated, compressed, concentrated, until it reached critical mass. You didn't leave because of the last straw. You left because you finally saw the whole haystack for what it was. A pile of disappointments held together by your hope. And once you saw it clearly, leaving wasn't emotional. It was logical, not a breakdown, but a breakthrough. Not rage, but clarity. Not hate, but indifference. Pure, simple, complete. Now they're dealing with replacement anxiety, watching you build connections, form bonds, create relationships with people who actually value you. And they're seeing in real time what they could have had if they'd just been better. Every person who treats you right is a mirror showing them their failures. Every moment you laugh with someone else is evidence. They were replaceable every time you thrive. Without them is proof they were never necessary. And that's a level of obsolescence. The ego can't handle being proven unnecessary to someone's happiness, being demonstrated as subtractable from someone's life equation, with the answer still coming out positive. Let's talk about the text they're sending right now, the casual, "Hey, how are you?" The nostalgic, "Remember when?" The guilt-trippy, "You really changed." The aggressive, "You think you're better than me now." They're throwing everything at the wall, hoping something sticks, hoping something triggers you back into caring, back into engaging, back into giving them the power they once had. But you're not biting. You're responding when appropriate, being kind but boundaried, polite but distant. You're treating them exactly how you'd treat any acquaintance, and that's what's killing them. Being downgraded from main character to background extra in your story. They're learning a brutal lesson right now, one that most people never learn until it's too late. People don't leave because you hurt them. Once people leave because you hurt them consistently, and they finally love themselves more than they loved you. You didn't leave in anger. You left in clarity. You didn't leave to hurt them. You left to save yourself. And now they're experiencing the aftermath not of your revenge, but of your recovery, not of your bitterness, but of your growth. They're casualties of your evolution, collateral damage of your healing witnesses to what happens when someone finally chooses themselves. Here's the part that's truly destroying them, though. It's not that you're over them, it's that you're over them genuinely. There's no performative healing, no fake it till you make it, no secretly still caring but pretending not to. You actually moved on, actually rebuilt, actually became someone who doesn't need what they offered. And they can feel it in your energy, your tone, your responses, or lack thereof. There's no anger to diffuse, no hurt to exploit, no guilt to manipulate, just emptiness where they used to exist. And emptiness can't be negotiated with, can't be charmed, can't be manipulated back into caring. They're probably going through your social media right now, analyzing every post, every picture, every interaction, trying to find evidence that you're not really over it, that this is all an act. But what they're finding is worse than anything they imagined. Genuine happiness, genuine peace, genuine growth. You're not posting revenge content. You're not subtweeting. You're not doing any of the things people do when they're still emotionally invested. You're just living, and they're not part of that life. Not in the pictures, not in the stories, not in the memories you're making. They've been edited out, deleted, removed, and the footage runs smoothly without them. You know what they're realizing right now that haunts them most. All those times you begged for basic decency, basic respect, basic effort. Those weren't dramatic exaggerations or unreasonable demands. You were literally asking for the bare minimum, and they couldn't even give you that. And now someone else is giving you the maximum, treating you how you deserved all along. And they're watching from the sidelines, seeing what they had, seeing what they lost, seeing what they'll never have again. Because you don't go backwards. Don't downgrade. Don't settle for less once you've experienced more. They had their chance. Actually, they had multiple chances, and they wasted every single one. Here's the psychology that's breaking them down right now. Cognitive dissonance on steroids. They need to believe they're good people who made mistakes. But your indifference suggests something darker, that maybe they weren't mistaken. They were consistent. That maybe it wasn't about circumstances or timing or bad luck. Maybe it was about character, about values, about who they fundamentally are. And that's an identity crisis that can't be resolved through your forgiveness, through your anger, through anything you give them, because you're giving them nothing. You're forcing them to sit with themselves, to face themselves, to be themselves, without using you as a mirror or shield or excuse. They're starting to notice patterns in their own life now. Other people leaving, other connections fading, other relationships failing. And they're beginning to suspect, just beginning, that maybe everyone else isn't the problem. Maybe the common denominator is them. But that thought, it's too heavy, too painful, too accountability laden, so they push it away. Replace it with easier narratives. You changed. People are ungrateful. Nobody appreciates them. But late at night, when the distractions fade, when they're alone with their thoughts, your indifference whispers the truth they don't want to hear. Maybe they're the architect of their own loneliness. Maybe they destroyed something real. Maybe they'll never find it again. Let me tell you what your indifference represents to them. It's not just losing you, it's losing the version of themselves they believed they were. When you cared about them, it validated their self-image, confirmed they were worthy, lovable, valuable. But when you stopped caring, genuinely, stopped not performing, stopped not playing games, stopped, it invalidated everything. It suggested, maybe they're not as great as they thought. Maybe their presence isn't a gift. Maybe their absence isn't a loss. And that existential questioning, it's more painful than any revenge you could have plotted because it comes from within, triggered by your external absence, but sustained by their internal doubt.